Okay, so now we got to build the stack. We got to build our drag stack, okay? You have a metal disc down here already, okay? We know we have a metal disc down here, okay? It's the brass, okay? So, can't put metal on metal. That'll never work. Just like brakes on a car. It's going to grind. It's going to make a nasty noise. So, next thing on would be a fiber. So, you're going to put one of your fiber discs on, okay? The next disc needs to be a smooth disc with no tabs on it. Okay, the very first one needs to be just a pinching disc. Okay, not a grabbing disc. So there is the disc. Now you need, obviously, another carbon fiber disc because no metal on metal. Now you're going to want to put your grabbing disc, the one that grabs the outside of that ring, and that's the one that has the 4 little tabs. Those 4 little tabs face downward and grab those 4 little notches that are on the ring gear. So you put that in till those drop down into place and lock into those grooves like that, and you're done. Grab your next carbon fiber ring or plate, put it on, and finalize it with your final steel. Plop that on. Now you've just built your carbon stack. Or whatever yours is made out of. I mean, KastKings, 90% of them are made out of carbon, so I say that with a grain of salt on other brands, but whatever. So now you want to lube the ring gear. We're going to go a little lighter on the ring gear because we don't want any lube getting down into the stack, okay, into our drag stack. So we're just going to fill those teeth, okay, just kind of rotate it around and mush it in. That's how I do it. I just take a glob on the end of there and I just kind of mush it into the gears. You know, it's a little ugly, but you know, that's all I do. I just mash it right into the center with a Q-tip, and you'll see it's just putting dots kind of like that. Once that thing rotates a few times, like I said, you don't have to cake it all through the whole thing. The gears, once they spin around 2 or 3 complete revolutions, they're going to take it where they want it. They're going to have as much of it in it as they want, and they are going to be fine. Wipe all the excess off, and you will be fine, okay? You're not going to, this thing's going to run like a top like that, okay? All right. We got that done, okay? Sit that back down and have it level by having something wedged under it. Now, we want to put together our pinion. Pinion shaft goes with the grooved part, that grooved part right there, with all the teeth marks in it and everything, as you can probably see right there. Yeah, the one with the teeth marks and everything, and that big nasty, looks like a drill bit end, that goes down, okay? That goes down and goes into the spool. The reason it's got those cut teeth is that's what helps it slide onto the part in the spool that has the pin in it. You got this little pin in the shaft right there, and to grab that pin, you don't want it to be just flat and cut off. It'd smack and tear stuff up. So to grab this pin, this through pin, they slant those things so it looks like kind of an end of a drill bit. So you want that facing down. The plastic riser that lifts and lowers the pinion, okay, it goes in one way. It has a flat side, all right, with holes in it. Those holes go all the way through to the other side, but the top side actually has the holes drilled a little bigger. Those bigger holes are for the 2 springs that give it its spring tension, okay? Those face up. Those 2 holes face up. So what you're going to do is you're going to take another little bit of lithium grease. This is another area that wants to stick. When you get the buttons, the button wanting to act weird on new reels or older reels that have gummed up, and you're trying to get the button to push and it kind of sticks sometimes, or when you crank it and it doesn't want to pop back down. This is 90% of the problem usually, is the grease that they put on this has gotten old and sticky and garbage like that. So that half moon area right there, between those 2 dots where the pins go, okay, that is where we're going to put the white lithium grease on the top and the bottom. That's it. Just smear a little there, smear a little there. That's all there is to it. Smear some in the front bottom and smear some on the top. Doesn't take much. That's it. That is it. Now, pinion gear. The grooves. The little grooves that look like the drill bit. Just dab a little on that. I go real thin in there, okay? Like that. I mean, there's hardly anything there. You don't need much. You're just kind of helping that pin have something to grab, okay? Now, there's teeth down on this bottom because that's how it's machined. They machine the gears in it. Then they cut the tapers and all that stuff in it. You do not need to grease that. Those gear teeth that are at the bottom part that goes down, you don't need to grease that. Ain't gonna hurt nothing if you do, but I mean, you're just gonna have extra grease in your reel that you don't need. So get some more lithium grease on your Q-tip. And the top part, that's all gears. That's all gear all the way to the top. We are going to do the same thing. We're gonna dab our grease into it. Okay, that's all we're gonna do. We're just gonna dab grease down into those grooves. Okay, that's all there is to it. Done. Beautiful. Okay, now we make sure our bigger holes are facing up. Okay, on the plastic riser, we're going to make sure our tapered grooved part is facing down. We're going to slide that groove into that. That's it. That's all there is to it. Okay. Now we're going to rotate it so that the gear part is facing the ring gear and the whole plastic part. So the part where the gear slides in like this is going to go towards the ring gear, and the all plastic part, which is the front side, is going to face away from the ring gear. And we're going to sit that on those two pins that are built into the plastic. Easy peasy. Sometimes you need to wiggle the pinion gear a little bit to get it to want to drop down in there, okay? Now, the pinion's going to want to move around a little bit when you do this, because nothing's holding it in place, especially with the spool out and everything. But just give it a nice, slow little rotate, okay? And you got to do it with the actual gear, okay? So just rotate it, and you're going to have to push it back down. It's going to want to pop the pinion shaft's going to want to lift up, okay? So just keep popping it down, okay? As it does that, just keep popping it down. Rotate nice and slow, okay? Nice and slow. Rotate it, okay? Once that comes around, once or twice, you know, whatever you feel like, depending on how much extra grease you put in there. If you're getting too much grease on the top, I can do it usually one time, but I'll do it two for the camera because I have done it so many times. I pretty much know to go pretty light with the grease and don't have to worry about it, okay? So after that, you're going to have most of the excess grease from that pinion on your finger, okay? So just wipe that off. Okay, take your dry Q-tip that you used before, and this is when you're going to finally take all the excess grease off the pinion and the main ring gear, okay? So you're just going to go over it and just get any of that excess grease off there, okay? There's no need for it. It does nothing being there, and you really don't want any sitting up on the top, you know, where the drag stack is. You don't need it. The most it could do is cause problems because you don't want any grease inside something that is doing braking for you. Okay, so we're done there. Okay, bingo. Now all we have to do is take our two springs. Don't lose them. Don't lose them. Don't lose them. I can't stress that enough. Two springs, okay? 2 and 2. Put those over those little pins, okay? And they stay in place pretty well. I guess if you wanted, you could always put a little lithium grease, the white lithium grease, on the bottom of them to make them stick a little bit, and then put them on. It's not going to hurt nothing. That grease down in there will not cause any problem because there's a constant pressure on that. I don't see that hurting anything. I really don't. I don't see that causing you any problems at all. I really don't. Now, you take your one-way clutch inner shaft, and it is splined. Put it on top of your crankshaft. Okay? Now is where there's a fun, tricky part. You have your one-way clutch that I told you you have to remember how it goes. If you put it in upside down, your whole entire reel system will crank the opposite way. It won't want to crank in the right direction. It'll crank in the opposite direction. We don't want that. So remember how that thing came out. Now this particular one, and I'm not going to say, because I don't remember is why I'm not going to say, this particular KastKing, the shoulder, if you can see that, there's a little shoulder on that one, okay? There's a little shoulder there, okay? That shoulder goes up on this particular model. There could be some that the shoulder goes down. There's some that may not have the shoulder, and I mean, I've had some of these apart, and I'm not going to say KastKing, but in the past, I've had some of these apart that they look the same. You had to know which way they turn, or you're going to tear it back apart because it ain't going to work right. So that one-way bearing has to go back on the right way. So hopefully you took a picture of that and you know which way that goes. What we're going to do is we're going to take our Lucas oil, our Lucas reel oil, and we're going to hit every one of those little bearings, okay? Every one of those one-way bearings, okay? And they wiggle around in there a lot because they're against a spring, and what that spring does is helps it kind of cushion it as it wedges into that wedge that I told you guys about in one of the other videos. And that wedge is what actually lets those bearings come outward and lock it. And then when you spin the opposite direction, it goes against those springs and lets them sink in and lets it free spin, okay? So now that that's lubed, it's ready to go on. And here's the little problem. It's keyed. You can see it's hexagon like a nut, okay? So's the case. And you got these little springs that have to fit on a seat inside there. Those two little seats right there and there, okay? Those two little seats right there. And that being hexagon has to line up with that. So some manufacturers will put a locking ring inside the case, that just a little, well, it's a lock ring basically. I mean, I guess that's what it's like a piece of wire that goes into a groove and locks that in. I've never seen any of theirs do that from KastKing, so it is a part that wants to fall out. How do you put it in there and get it to go down? I guess you could put some lithium grease on it and go that route. That would be one way of doing it. I just kind of fight it a little bit. So it's just a word of warning that that's something you got to do, because when you fight it, I just put the bearing on, okay? You see the bearings on there now. So I'm going to have to try and get this to line up with that hexagon inside there without messing my springs up, making those springs come flying off. That's where putting a little lithium grease on those springs probably is going to do you some good. I don't do it, and I can't say I don't fight it because of that at times. But all I do then is I bring the top down and I just kind of watch where things are going, and I just kind of wiggle it a little bit until I try to find where that thing's lined up at, okay? And it takes a while. You got to kind of look at it, you know, and it's not that bad, but sometimes it can take a while. Sometimes I'll turn the crank, and there it went. Turning the crank gave me the blow I needed to get it to go.